Are they too spicy? Not spicy enough? What do you guys think? No? Okay. Well, they'll tie back in later. But what I'm really talking about today is called neuroplasticity. And you'll see why the Cheetos tie into it later. It's not just something random that I thought of out of this morning, whatever. It's neuroplasticity is actually something quite interesting. This is you guys right now, see? But neuroplasticity is the principle that your brain is actually capable of reshaping throughout your entire life. Up until a few years ago, scientists thought you could only change your brain when you were in your developmental years. So like young adult, teenager, that's like kind of a cap. But they recently discovered that you're actually capable of changing your brain throughout your life. And what's interesting about that is there's actually two principles that kind of go into that overall. And that's genesis and pruning. Okay, so genesis means you're creating a new path in your brain. So for example, raise your hand if you have been doing the same job for more than a couple years. Okay, how much easier is it now than when you first started? Probably a little bit easier, right? That's genesis at work. Okay, so basically your brain is creating those paths that are used to that work. Now, before I distract you guys anymore, I'm actually going to take this off. It's super hot. It's actually pretty warm too. So basically, pruning is the opposite of genesis. So essentially, where genesis is creating those new paths, pruning is destroying them. So for example, if you have a habit that you've had for your entire life, right? That's the genesis working on that and it becomes muscle memory. But then when you stop it, it becomes harder after you've stopped because those brain paths or neural pathways have actually been destroyed by that pruning. And so what I like to call it, what I've heard a couple other people call it, is deer path theory. So raise your hand if we have any hunters in the audience. Actually, Norm, let me rephrase. Any people who enjoy hunting in the audience. So, essentially, if you're familiar with the outdoors and wildlife a little bit, right, you know that animals tend to follow trails, right, through the woods. You'll see them walking through the woods out back here. There'll be little tiny trails where it's a little bit more worn than some other things. Your brain actually works the exact same way. So the more you think about something with that genesis, the more you become used to it, it becomes a path in your brain. So there's not as much brain power that goes into it afterwards. For example, if you make it a habit to tell the truth, just all the time, it becomes easier over time to develop that path of telling the truth. The same can be said for lying. If you're a liar all the time, it just gets easier and easier every single time. And so, for example, 60% of your brain is made up of these pathways. So if you let negative habits dictate these pathways, what's going to happen to your brain? It's going to become more negative over time. And I believe I kind of found a correlation between this science and a lot of commands that I found in the scriptures about staying positive. And I'll explain that a little bit later. But here's the thing. First of all, I'd like to say, looking at stock images is kind of funny. Because this is like one of the most normal looking ones that I found. There's some weird stock images out there. And I'll show some examples so you guys want to see them later. Some of them are pretty funny. But, for example, take a musician. I'm not sure who that is.
Yeah,
but
that's a couple years
looks like a musician, right? Something like that. So if you played music for a long, long time, and your brain is made up of those pathways, then you're more prone to being able to play music than somebody who's never played music before. A great example of this is the other night you all saw Dad play drums, right? Right? He hasn't played drums in like 10 years. Which first of all isn't fair, because I practice all the time, and he did the exact same thing I did after 10 years of not playing. But that's a great example of how many pathways your brain has and how much it can have an impact on it. And it's where that phrase, just like riding a bike, that's where it comes from. That's where that phrase originated, is because once you know how to ride a bike, and you've made those pathways in your brain, then it's just like riding a bike. Now, the same can be said for the Yah's commandments. Not specifically the 10 commandments, it applies to a lot of them. But let's just take the first one. I, the Lord, am your God. You shall have no other gods besides me. How much easier is it to focus on one instead of changing to a bunch of them? Right? If you focus on observing only Him and only His commands, then that'll help you in your life stay focused. You have a positive idea of that, because if your brain is made up of a bunch of different God pathways, then how are you supposed to know which one's right? Right?
Right.
And so I've come to find that biblical habits, specifically those related to the Torah and the Proverbs and stuff like that, have actually helped create a healthier mind and a healthier body in a lot of people. And so, for example, the two biggest ones I could find, the ones that spoke to me the most, are Proverbs 17:22 and Proverbs 3, verses 7 through 8. Okay, so the first one, a cheerful heart is good medicine, but a crushed spirit dries up the bones. Who here has experienced any of that?
Oh, yeah.
When you're more positive,
Yeah.
you end up feeling better.
Yeah.
Right? And Proverbs 3, 7, and 8, do not be wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and shun evil. This will bring health to your body and nourishment to your bones.
Right.
This is quite literally saying that if you follow His commands, shun evil, follow the Lord, it'll make you healthier. How cool is that?
Yes.
Right.
The biggest thing I could find scientifically to support this is this Johns Hopkins medical study. And just a little bit of background for those of you who haven't heard of Johns Hopkins somehow. They serve over 4 million patients every year, combining all of their facilities. 325,000 emergency room visits and 160,000 treatments in their home branch. That's a lot of people. And so what they did is they actually set up a study of people determining positive versus negative outlook. And they did a bunch of small, numerical things with figuring out what they could use to assess positivity versus negativity. But essentially, they just took in overall cheerfulness, energy level, anxiety level, satisfaction with life, stuff like that. You know, the little stuff. And what they did is they actually found that people with a family history of heart disease who had a positive outlook were 1/3 less likely to have a heart attack or any cardiovascular event within 5 to 25 years than those with a negative outlook. And what they did is they actually found that those with predisposition to heart conditions ended up being less likely to have them when they were positive than people that didn't even have heart conditions. So that's positivity overcoming a predisposition for disease, and then negativity overcoming not having that.
Good point.
How crazy is that?
Good point.
That's crazy. It is pretty crazy. Again with the stocking. Yeah. So, what's the real point here? Told you to come back. Everybody, I did my own personal experiment because up until last year, these were like one of my favorite foods. These were one of my go-tos. Okay? Not specifically the Flamin' Hot ones. Don't judge me, whoever laughed. Not specifically the Flamin' Hot ones, but Cheetos in general. And I could literally sit down and eat like a million Cheetos. I've done it before. But after hearing Timothy's message last year, which spoke to me greatly and kind of inspired this thought process, I was like, you know what? I should do an experiment. And so I decided to not eat a single bag of Flamin' Hot Cheetos until today. And guess what I did? I had Flamin' Hot Cheetos today, guys. And you know what I found? They didn't taste nearly as good as when I used to eat them all the time.
That's right.
And so I was like, you know what else could this apply to? What else could this mean in your life? And I was kind of thinking about it. And sin kind of operates the same way.
Yes.
If you're consistently living a life full of sin, you're comfortable with it, you're happy with it, you're like, you know what, this is me. This is it. It feels good, right? It's that constant self-satisfaction, all that stuff. That's the Flamin' Hot Cheetos in this mix, okay? And so if you break that chain, with the pruning of your neural pathways, then you can help solve a lot of the problems in your life. You get a less negative outlook. And then, when you eat those flaming hot Cheetos again, whether on purpose or by accident, whatever, it's not going to taste nearly as good.
No, it won't.
Right.
Amen.
Not even close.
Amen.
And so, that brings me to any questions that you guys have. I try to keep it short, to keep it kind of condensed so you can have all the information right there. Because I tend to forget what happened at the beginning of a lot of presentations if it takes too long. So I figured any questions you guys have about that stuff, anything I didn't answer, anything I can help you guys out with.
Question.
What's up?
I noticed that in this last year you've gotten away from a lot of the comfort foods and doing more salads, and
Yeah.
you took up a challenge to run
Yes, I have.
a group of exercises. What is? Okay, so what has that done for you?
That's, on a physical level, it's helped me just be healthier and feel better more consistently, but it's actually helped me on a spiritual level as well, because having that focus, not only over whatever sin or whatever struggles you might have, but over your physical being, it helps you to focus on what's more important in life,
Yeah.
like studying the scriptures, knowing yourself past what you're made of,
Right.
you know?
Excellent.
Anything else? Anyone else? What's up, James?
How much did that suit cost?
That's not a question I would like to say publicly. Anyone else? What's up?
How do you deal with, in your example of the Cheetos, how do you deal with those memories while you're trying to figure yourself out?
That's actually a really good question. And in my research, I actually found something that was kind of close to that topic. I wasn't sure if I wanted to bring it up because I wasn't sure I could explain it effectively. But essentially, there is a process of getting away from that stuff. And in my research of stuff like, for example, addiction to alcohol, drugs, that sort of thing, it's better to slowly get away from it than actually just to stop cold. Because what happens with that is you end up going back to it and feeling even worse than before, just on a scientific level. I couldn't necessarily find any scriptural backing for that, which is why I didn't include it in here. But in my research of the studies and science that's behind that, is it's better to try to slowly separate yourself from it. Kind of like the weaning process of a baby when they're going from milk to solid food. You don't just feed them a steak right away, because then it's going to enjoy it, and then you're going to have to feed it steak all the time. That's expensive. So what you need to do is, on a scientific level, it's just better to slowly separate from that. And that's actually what helped me, is I was already starting to kind of get healthier over the recent times. So stopping just then was actually not as hard for me as if I had been continuously eating it and stuff like that. So that's my personal experience. You're welcome to ask anyone else, but that's for me. What's up, Shane?
So if we study this in terms of what you do with food, the word diet, right? This concept of diet has been one of those little pathways in our culture forever. To be on a diet.
Right.
And we try to have these diets that lead to these changes.
Right.
Right?
Yes.
But we found they're not very successful. Did you look into that at all? Like, we had your example with Cheetos.
Yeah.
Did you see that, like, simply eliminating certain pleasure or comfort foods kind of led to a spirit where you were just doing everything healthier? Is that?
I have actually, and on that note is, once you start getting away from one unhealthy thing, it's way easier to start getting away from all the stuff you don't like to do. For example, if I don't like sitting on the floor all the time, and I start getting up and walking around a little more often, I'm not going to want to sit on the floor as much because I'm enjoying something else. If you take away, for example, the Cheetos, right, you can find that you actually enjoy a lot of other stuff because you're not as stuck on that thing. So one thing spiritually and mentally for me is I struggle with positivity a lot. And so if I find myself being more negative, it's way easier to slip back into that negative, right? You're getting back into it, and it's your muscle memory comes back to that. But if you focus on the positivity and not eating those Cheetos, right, you can start to find that you're capable of more than you thought.
Right.
So if you're capable of not eating Flamin' Hot Cheetos, you're also capable of not eating chocolate cake.
Oof.
Yeah.
Oh, now you're meddling.
Not eating
Now you're
chocolate
meddling.
cake. Too sacrilegious.
Now Shane hates this message.
But yeah, once you start getting rid of those smaller things, the positivity starts to compound. It did for me, and I know a lot of people that have experienced the same thing. So if you start getting that little steps, all about baby steps with neuroplasticity. You can't expect your brain to change overnight. It's a process that takes time.
Good point.
What's up?
So, you spoke about not eating, right, or stop doing something bad,
Correct.
right? And in the same way, we have negative commandments, do not, X, Y, Z,
Right.
and we have positive commandments of do
Right.
X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
So I was wondering if you have an input regarding, instead of just not doing something, maybe doing a positive thing,
Yes,
right, to
actually.
replace
Which
that.
actually is somewhat of what I was responding to Shane's question, is if you start not doing something negative, that leaves you room to do something positive. So let's say come back to the Cheetos example, we're going no Flamin' Hot Cheetos. You can, you don't do Cheetos and you do eat carrots, for example.
Same color.
Yeah, exactly. Convince yourself, this is a Cheeto.
Right.
Eat it, right? So taking that do not and turning it into something that is a do can also help more genesis of positive pathways in your brain.
But you could put cayenne pepper on a carrot and kind of get that.
You could.
So again, two of the teen messages have been about changing minds, right? And I think that's kind of interesting. And so I wanted to have maybe, something in my life I wish my dad would change his mind, right? I can't seem to figure out a way to change his neural pathways, or there doesn't seem to be a path, a way there. And I'm kind of wondering, did this message kind of spawn from that same thing? Seeing a stubbornness in maybe Ben or your grandfather, your parents, or me, or people that you fellowship with, and there's a part of you that's hoping that we can have our minds open enough to have neural pathway changes. Is there any motivation there, or was it more just internally, purposefully with you?
Yeah, I think it was not necessarily anyone that I know. I've just seen a lot of people that say, I wish I could change this about my mind. I wish I could do this. I wish I was more positive. I wish I liked myself more. I wish I liked this person more. And what this message and the research actually helped me do is do a lot of internal contemplation of what I am with myself.
There it is.
And finding that if I can change my mind, then I can help influence those to change theirs. And the biggest thing is that you can't change anyone's mind.
Well, that's right.
You can just change your mind about how you think about them. And that's one thing that I take away from this.
Good, good. That's awesome.
John?
I think your message can be summed up in Ephesians 4:22 to 24. It says, that you put off concerning the former behavior of the old man, which is corrupt, according to the deceitful lust, and be renewed in the spirit of your mind. And that you put on the new man, which after Elohim is created in righteousness and true holiness.
Right.
So from a spiritual perspective, that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And doing this, I've always liked to find a practical takeaway from a message. That's the biggest thing for me. It's like, I can read about Hebrew, read about the scriptures all day long, but if there's nothing that I can do to improve my walk from it, then what's the point? And so from this, if I can give one big takeaway, it's that following God's commandments isn't just about reading them, doing them because He said so. It's because He knows and He created us to have a brain that will benefit from those commands.
Yes.
So if you are following, let's see, what was the word saying to make sure I'm saying it correctly? A cheerful heart or shunning evil, right? You're following those commands, it will bring you good health. And now there's science proving that, so we just don't obviously you can take the word for it, because it's the word, but to see it physically manifesting in a secular source, right?
Right.
How awesome would
Right.
it be if somebody brought up that study and you were like, there's actually a Bible verse about that.
Yes.
That's what I live for, is to bring those
Yes.
practical commands
Yeah.
Yeah.
and tie them into how we can use them every single day.
Oh man. Oh man. Good stuff.
Any other questions from anyone? Going once? I'm sorry?
What was the address on Ephesians?
That was John,
Ephesians
what was
4.
it?
Ephesians
4:22.
22 to 24.
Yeah, Ephesians 4, 22, 24.
Right.
All right. No more questions? Thank you very much. Oh, David.
One more question. Obviously, for some people, a certain, it will be a Cheeto or something else, but it's more difficult to keep, to not keep falling into it. I mean, I said, I'm clean for 3 months, but then I was weak in one moment and then fell for it.
Yeah.
Alright, so, and I ate my bag of Cheetos. I actually ended up eating 5 bags of Cheetos.
Yeah.
Right? So, because
Yeah.
we all have those moments. Where in your brain, or what helps you, or what do you think that helps each individual to overcome that sense of failure
Yes, actually, I found.
and go back and try?
Yeah, so the best way I can describe what I've experienced with that is encouragement from others and encouragement from the Word. For example, these verses about how it's keeping yourself positive will help you be healthy. Those things, and a strong support group, so like my family, people that I can call and talk to any time of the day or night, and they'll be there for me, and they will help encourage me, because for your, let's say your example, right? You're clean 3 months, you eat a bag of Cheetos, right? You aren't a failure because you ate that bag of Cheetos. You're being victorious by going so long without it. You are getting better, even if you feel like you're not, you're getting better. And you need a support group, and I have a support group that I love, and it's awesome that I have it, to be around me and get that encouragement to tell you to your face, you're not a failure.
Right.
You're working hard. It's all about the effort behind it. It's all about trying to put these into action. If you mess up one time out of 100, that one doesn't define the 100.
That's right.
That's just one.
Right.
If you mess up one time out of 100, that one doesn't define the 100.
Right.
That's just one.
Good point.
So you're capable. This proves to me that I am capable of moving past my struggles. Anything less. If I keep a cheerful heart and I shun evil and fear the Lord, it will bring me good health. And that's capable. Anyone's capable of that.
There you go.
Tori?
I think what you were saying about kind of like gradually, moving into that as well, not like cold turkey type thing. It made me think of to the Jerusalem Council as well, how there was this big argument about what the leaders needed to do. And, they just simplified it because they knew they were going to be going to synagogue every Saturday, learning the laws and learning the commands, and they would grow in that. But, right away in Acts 15, 20, it said to write to them to abstain from things polluted by idols, from sexual immorality, and from things strangled, and from blood. And so it was just like they kept it simple, like the most important things, and then they knew that that wasn't saying like that's all you ever have to do ever, but that they would grow in that
Right.
as they grew in their faith, So that's what I mean.
And remember, it's not a sin to be tempted.
Right.
Yeshua was tempted. It's not a sin to be tempted. It's only anything wrong if you let yourself.
Give it to it.
Because you making a mistake is not you being a failure. That's the big thing that I've dealt with, and I hear a lot of people deal with, is a mistake does not make you a failure.
Right.
Everyone makes mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes.
Everyone.
I mean, I don't, but you guys probably do. The thing is, you have to keep that positive mindset, a cheerful heart. You have to keep that in you, because if you have that, there's nothing that can break you. You're going to have a healthy body and nourishment to your bones.
Okay. With all of that, in a whole year of you changing your eating habit and your exercise habit, among your siblings, did you see anyone else in your younger siblings that changed their eating habits or anything?
Interestingly enough, yes, I did.
Yeah.
Because being that influence to yourself then makes you that influence to others.
Right.
Right? So if everyone around you is working out and eating healthy, and you're the only one standing there with a bag of chips, you're going to be like,
Right?
like that, you know? And so being healthier myself, just on, like I said, on a physical level, I've seen some of my younger siblings start to want to work out more. William picks up random things.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's awesome. And being that positive influence to yourself also helps you be a positive influence to others.
Good point. Good point.
Norm?
One thing that helps me in the same kind of mindset is to remind yourself that you're constantly getting better, even if you slip up.
Right.
So if you do a self-exam and you say, I'm actually doing better with pride or unleashing my tongue than I was last year or last month or last week, then you can, it helps for me because if you mess up, you still say, hold on a second, I messed up right there, but I am doing better overall. And so,
Yeah.
I guess, I'm not going pointing out the self-positivity.
Yeah.
When you can understand and comprehend that you are being better, it seems to be more uplifting because if you do make a mistake or you backpedal, you sprinkle extra MSG on your Cheetos, you then will understand that you're doing better, but you might have to slip up here and there.
Right.
Don't lay guilt on yourself too hard.
Right. And that's where a support group comes in. Because you, in yourself, if you mess up, you're like, that's it. I ruined it. It's all over.
Yeah.
But what you need, I would say it's a need. Because it's a need for me. I don't know if it's a need for you. If you can do it without it, then power to you. But if you have a support group that can remind you from an outside perspective, you're not, dude, you've been doing good for so long. This isn't what defines you. It's the effort to change that defines you.
That's a good way to put it, define.
Adam, you had your hand up?
Yeah. There's another passage that came to mind when you're doing that, and this came to mind right when you asked your question, David, about conform to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that you may prove what is the will of God, that which is good, acceptable, and perfect. And that word for renewing isn't actually a verb, it's like a noun. It means renovation. So if you think about anyone who's ever renovated anything knows that if you go in and you have to rewire a switch or 100 switches or whatever, and you screw one of them up, you got to go back and do it again and retest and make sure it all works properly. But it's not the process; it's the end result that ends up being that. And then what you just said too, it's huge for us, I think, to encourage one another purposefully, not just in a reactive state. But if you go to somebody, one of the most impactful things to me when I was younger, after I became a Christian, was that somebody came up to me and told me that my peers told me, Adam, just stop and think about how different you are than you were, and I wouldn't have even thought about that, and that was very encouraging for me too. So.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Any questions? John?
Did you try and overcome these things in your own strength, or do you believe that Messiah in you was helping you and the Holy Spirit is helping you?
I believe the Spirit was helping me in a lot of ways. I believe that not only was He helping me inside, but He was giving me people around me that I needed to overcome that stuff.
Right.
So if you have people around you, I know a lot of people in this room have people around them they can ask, they can call out to. And if God's giving you that person, He's giving you that person for a reason.
Oh, man. Oh, that's good. That's real good.
Anyone else? Anything else I can answer? Well, thank you guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you.